I asked my parents for help to cover my hospital bill. They refused and told me to handle it on my own. Years later, they called asking for money to support my brother's children after he disappeared. I'm 31 male and haven't spoken to my parents in almost 6 years. Not a single word. No birthday calls, no holiday texts, no awkward run-ins at family gatherings because I stopped going to those too. Complete radio silence. The breaking point was a type 2 diabetes diagnosis when I was 25 between jobs, and my insurance wouldn't cover the medication I literally needed to stay alive. But before we dive into that particular disaster, let me paint you a picture of my family dynamics. Because this whole situation makes way more sense when you understand the pattern. My parents, Richard and Patricia, are your stereotypical suburban middle-class couple who spent 30 years building what they considered a comfortable retirement. Dad worked in manufacturing management, climbed the ladder over decades, ended up making decent money. Mom did accounting for a regional hospital network, steady work with good benefits. They retired at 62 with a paid-off house in a nice neighborhood, 2 cars that were only a few years old, and enough retirement savings to take annual cruises without even blinking at the cost. They weren't struggling financially, not even close. They had that comfortable middle-class retirement where you can afford pretty much anything you want within reason. The kind of retirement most people dream about. No mortgage, no debt, pension coming in, 401k sitting there as backup. They were set. My older brother Wyatt is 39, 8 years older than me. That age gap meant we were never really close growing up. By the time I was starting middle school and actually developing a personality, he was already moved out and doing his own thing. We existed in the same family but lived basically separate lives. Growing up, I always felt like the practice kid. You know how some families have that dynamic where the first kid gets all the attention and the second one just kind of exists? That was us. Wyatt was the golden child who could do no wrong. Every milestone he hit was celebrated like he'd cured something major. Meanwhile, I could bring home straight A's and get a pat on the head and a "that's nice, dear." The favoritism was blatant, but nobody acknowledged it. When Wyatt needed money for anything, car repairs, rent assistance, whatever, my parents were there immediately with open checkbooks. When I needed help, suddenly it became a teaching moment about self-reliance and personal responsibility. I remember being 16 and needing $200 for a school trip. It was this educational thing all my friends were going. I'd been looking forward to it for months. My parents said no. Too expensive. They didn't see the value in it. I needed to learn that not everything in life gets handed to you. 2 weeks later, Wyatt asked for $800 to help with his security deposit on a new apartment. They gave it to him the same day. When I pointed out the inconsistency, Dad said it was different because Wyatt was an adult with adult responsibilities. I was just a kid asking for vacation money. That kind of thing happened constantly. Different standards, different rules, different everything depending on which son you were talking about. I learned pretty early that I couldn't rely on them for support. Everything I got, I had to earn or fight for myself. Fast forward to when I was 25. I'd been working at this tech startup for about a year and a half. Not a huge company, maybe 30 employees, but it was growing and I was learning a lot. The pay was decent, benefits were okay, and I was building experience in my field. Then the funding dried up, investors pulled out. Company couldn't make payroll and we all got laid off with about 2 weeks' notice. Not ideal, but these things happen. The job market was decent at the time, so I wasn't panicking. Started applying places immediately, had my resume updated, began networking. The plan was to find something within a month or two, bridge the gap with savings, and move forward. Then I started feeling off, constantly thirsty, tired all the time, losing weight, without trying, having to use the bathroom every hour. Classic diabetes symptoms, but I didn't recognize them at first. Thought maybe it was stress from the job loss. After 2 weeks of feeling progressively worse, I went to an urgent care clinic. They ran some tests. My blood sugar levels were through the roof, and the doctor looked at me with that expression medical professionals get when they're about to deliver bad news. "You have type 2 diabetes," he said. "Your A1C is 11.2. That's dangerously high. We need to get you on medication immediately." He wrote prescriptions for 2 different medications plus testing supplies. Told me I needed to check my blood sugar multiple times daily, follow a strict diet, and come back in 3 months for follow-up. Then he handed me the prescriptions and wished me luck. I took the scripts to the pharmacy figuring they'd be expensive but manageable. The pharmacist ran them through my insurance, the COBRA coverage from my old job that I'd signed up for, and came back with a total that made my stomach drop. That'll be $847 for the month supply of everything, she said cheerfully. $847 for 1 month. My unemployment benefits were $380 weekly. Even with budgeting, I was looking at maybe $1,600 monthly income. Rent alone was $850. This medication would take more than half of what I had left after housing. I asked about generic versions, discount programs, anything to bring the cost down. She tried a few things, got it down to $780. Still completely unsustainable. I told her I'd have to figure something out and left without the medications. That night, I spent hours researching options patient assistance programs that would take months to process discount cards that only worked at specific pharmacies. Canadian pharmacies that might be legit, but also might not be. Nothing was going to solve my immediate problem of needing medication now and not being able to afford it. I had about $3,000 in savings. That was supposed to be my emergency fund for exactly this kind of situation. But if I spent it all on medication, I'd have nothing for rent, food, or the unexpected expenses that always pop up. I was looking at choosing between my health and having a place to live. So I did what any reasonable person would do when facing a genuine medical emergency with no good options. I called my parents, not asking for a handout, not expecting them to cover everything forever, just looking for temporary help while I got back on my feet. I explained the whole situation. The layoff, the diagnosis, the medication costs, how I had job interviews lined up but needed a bridge for maybe 3 to 4 months until I got hired somewhere with better insurance. I laid out actual numbers. If they could cover maybe $600 monthly for 3 months, that would give me enough breathing room to make everything else work. Dad's response came after about 5 seconds of silence. "You're 25 years old," he said, voice flat. "You need to figure some things out on your own. Don't rely on us just because we're your family." Mom was on speakerphone and she jumped in with her addition. "We've already raised you. You're an adult now. This is your responsibility to handle." I sat there, stunned, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I was hearing. This was a medical emergency. I wasn't asking them to fund a vacation or buy me a car. I needed medication to not go into diabetic shock. And they were lecturing me about personal responsibility. "So you're saying you won't help at all?" I asked, just to be crystal clear. "We're saying you need to learn to manage your own problems," Dad replied. "We can't bail you out every time life gets difficult. Every time." I'd never asked them for major help before in my adult life. This was literally the first time I'd requested anything significant since moving out. "I have diabetes," I said slowly, trying to make them understand. "Without medication, I could end up in the hospital or worse. This isn't me being irresponsible or lazy. This is a genuine medical crisis." "Then you'll figure out what you need to do," Dad said. "We didn't raise you to come running to us whenever things get tough." Mom added her final gem. "Maybe this is what you need to learn. Independence? We've spent too many years enabling you, enabling me by not helping me with anything." The logic was non-existent, but I was past the point of arguing. "Got it," I said. "Thanks for nothing." I hung up. That was September 2017. Last time we spoke until 6 weeks ago. Here's what happened in those 6 years. I figured it out on my own, just like they told me to. I sold my car and bought something cheaper, freeing up $200 monthly. Moved to a smaller apartment with a roommate I found through work, cutting rent. In half, applied to every patient assistance program that existed. Filled out mountains of paperwork. Waited through their processing times. Started buying medication from Canadian pharmacies at a quarter of the US price. Found websites that connected Americans with legitimate Canadian pharmacies that would ship across the border. Was it legal? Gray area? Did I care? Not even slightly. I was choosing between following pharmaceutical industry pricing schemes or staying alive. Pretty easy decision when you frame it that way. The first few months were rough. Managing diabetes while dealing with the stress of unemployment and family rejection was like juggling chainsaws while walking a tightrope. Blood sugar all over the place from the stress. Constantly worried about money, wondering if I'd made the right choices. But I handled it. Found creative solutions, cut every possible expense, made it work through sheer determination. I landed a new job after 3 months of searching. The insurance was better brought my medication costs down to manageable levels. I threw myself into work, proved myself valuable, and got promoted within a year. Then again, 2 years after that, built a reputation as someone reliable who delivered results. Met my now wife Natalie at a friend's barbecue when I was 27. She was smart, funny, had her life together, and didn't come with any family drama attached. We clicked immediately. Started dating, moved in together after a year, got engaged 6 months after that. Bought a house when I was 28. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, decent neighborhood, good schools nearby for the kids we were planning to have eventually. Got married at 29 in a small ceremony with Natalie's family and our close friends. My parents weren't invited. They didn't even know it happened until someone probably told them months later. Built an actual life, the kind of stable, successful life my parents always said they wanted for me. Just did it completely without their input or support. My parents didn't hear from me once. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation. They clearly meant what they said about me handling my own problems. Fine by me. Then 6 weeks ago, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Opened it to find a message from my mom. "We need to talk. It's urgent." I stared at that text for a solid minute, sitting there on my couch with Natalie beside me watching a movie. 6 years of complete silence, and now something suddenly urgent. My first instinct was to delete it and move on with my life. I didn't respond. She texted again 2 hours later. "This is about your nephews. Please call." That got my attention. Wyatt had 2 kids. I knew that much from the occasional Facebook stalking I'd done over the years. Boys ages 8 and 6. I'd never met them. Didn't even know their names until I looked at the Facebook photos Mom had posted over the years that I'd never bothered to engage with. They looked like normal kids smiling in photos, playing at parks, the usual family stuff. I called curiosity overcoming better judgment. Part of me wondered if something had happened to Wyatt. Part of me wondered if the kids were in danger. The responsible part of my brain kicked in despite my better judgment. Finally, Mom said when she answered not even a hello first, "We've been trying to reach you for days. You sent 1 text 2 hours ago." 2. "Well, this is serious. We need to talk about Wyatt's children. Can you come over? We should discuss this in person. I'm not driving to your house. Whatever you need to say it now." She sighed like I was the one being difficult here. "Fine. It's about the boys, your nephews. They've been living with us for the past 2 months. Okay. And we need help. We're not young anymore. Raising 2 children at our age is exhausting. Where's Wyatt?" Another sigh. "That's complicated. Uncomplicated." She launched into the whole story. Wyatt's wife Jennifer had died in a car accident 8 months ago. Some guy ran a red light, T-boned her car. She died at the scene. Tragic, horrible, the kind of thing nobody should have to go through. Wyatt had apparently been struggling to cope ever since. Started drinking heavily, according to Mom, though she said it in that tone that suggested she was downplaying the severity. Knowing Wyatt's history with substances, he'd had problems in his 20s that my parents had always excused. I suspected drinking heavily meant something pretty severe. Then 2 months ago, Wyatt sent my parents an email, not a phone call, not an in-person conversation, an email. Said he needed time to figure things out, that he couldn't handle being a parent right now, that the boys were better off with their grandparents while he got his head together. And then he just disappeared. Stopped responding to calls and texts. My parents had no idea where he was. Could be staying with friends, could be in a motel somewhere, could be halfway across the country for all they knew. He'd essentially abandoned his kids via electronic communication and vanished. Classy move. "So what's the plan?" I asked Mom. "Is he coming back? Is this temporary or permanent?" "We don't know," she admitted. "He's not responding to us. His phone goes straight to voicemail. We've had the boys for 2 months now and we're drowning. That sounds difficult. What do you want from me?" "We need you to help financially," she said, getting to the point. "These boys need things. Food, clothes, school supplies, activities. We're looking at about $1,500 monthly for their expenses. Plus, we're having to look into therapy for them because they're obviously traumatized." I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. The situation was so absurd that laughter was the only appropriate response. "You want me to send you $1,500 a month. These are your nephews. Your family. Family takes care of family." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. That's interesting, I said, because 6 years ago, when I needed help with $800 monthly for medication, you told me to figure it out on my own. Said you wouldn't bail me out every time life gets difficult. Silence on the other end. That was different, Mom finally said. How? Explain to me how it was different. You were an adult who needed to learn responsibility. These are children. So when I was between jobs with a medical emergency, that was a teaching moment. But when Wyatt abandons his kids, that's when family steps up. This isn't about keeping score, Dad's voice came through. Apparently I was on speaker. These boys need help. Then help them. You're retired with money in the bank. You told me you couldn't help with $600 monthly when I was literally sick. Now you're asking for $1,500 for kids that aren't even my responsibility. We're on a fixed income, Mom said. We can't afford to raise 2 children, so figure it out on your own. Don't rely on me just because we're family. I used their exact words back at them. The silence that followed was beautiful. That's different, and you know it, Dad said. How? Please explain how this is different from what you told me 6 years ago. Because we actually helped you when you were growing up, Mom snapped. We raised you, fed. You put a roof over your head for 18 years. You owe us. I owe you for doing the literal bare minimum that parents are legally required to do. You chose to have kids. That's not some debt I need to repay. We're not asking you to raise them, Dad said. Just help financially while we figure out a long-term solution. And what happens when there's no long-term solution? What happens when Wyatt doesn't come back and these kids need to be raised for the next 10 years? You think I'm going to keep sending checks? Your brother is going through something difficult, Mom said. He'll get himself together. Maybe this is what he needs to learn. Independence, I said, throwing her words from 6 years ago right back at her. Maybe you've spent too many years enabling him. Don't be cruel, she said. I'm not being cruel. I'm being exactly as supportive as you taught me to be. Remember, you can't bail people out every time life gets difficult. This is completely different, Dad said. These are innocent children. Then be their grandparents. Use your comfortable retirement savings that you couldn't spare $600 from 6 years ago. You'll figure it out. We need your help, Mom said, desperation creeping into her voice. No, you need my money. There's a difference. You don't actually want me involved in these kids' lives. You just want me to fund their existence while you two maintain your lifestyle. That's not fair, she protested. You're right. It's not fair. Just like it wasn't fair when you told your diabetic son to figure it out alone while you went on a cruise. But here we are. We didn't go on a cruise right after that, Dad said. 3 months later. Close enough. The point is, you had money for vacations but not for medication. Now you have money for your retirement but not for your grandkids. Funny pattern. If you won't help, just say so, Mom said coldly. I won't help. There, I said it. Then you're exactly as selfish as we thought. Good. I learned from the best. I hung up before they could respond. Natalie had been listening to the whole conversation. She walked over and hugged me, and I realized my hands were shaking. You okay? She asked. Yeah. Just didn't expect that to feel so satisfying. She laughed. You gave them back everything they gave you. 6 years, I said. 6 years of nothing. And they show up asking for money like we're suddenly family again. The next week, they tried a different approach. Mom called and left a voicemail that was clearly rehearsed. Her voice was breaking in all the right places. Emotional but calculated, hitting every manipulation beat perfectly. Sweetie, it's Mom. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation about what happened 6 years ago. And you're right. We should have helped you. We should have been there when you were sick. I don't know what we were thinking. Maybe we were scared. Maybe we didn't understand how serious it was. But we failed you, and I'm sorry for that. Pause for dramatic effect. Sniffle. I know I can't take back what happened. I know we hurt you, but this is a chance for us to move forward as a family to do the right thing together. These boys need us. They need all of us. Please call me back so we can talk about this properly. I love you. I played that voicemail for Natalie. She looked at me with raised eyebrows. That's possibly the most manipulative thing I've ever heard, she said. She's not even apologizing for what they did. She's apologizing for your feelings about it. Sorry we failed you, I said. Not sorry for telling me to handle my medical emergency alone. Not sorry for going on a cruise 3 months later. Just sorry that I felt bad about it. And immediately followed by asking for money again. Classic non-apology. I'm sorry, but here's why you should do what I want anyway. I didn't call back. The message had been carefully crafted to hit emotional buttons while avoiding actual accountability. If she genuinely wanted to apologize, she would have done it without immediately pivoting back to their demands. 3 days later, they showed up at my house. Just appeared on my doorstep Saturday morning like they had any right to be there. Natalie answered the door while I was in the shower. Came upstairs looking equal parts annoyed and amused. "Your parents are here," she said. "Should I tell them to leave or do you want to handle this?" "I'll handle it," I said, getting dressed. This should be interesting. I went downstairs to find them sitting in my living room like they owned the place. Dad was looking around at the furniture, the TV, the framed pictures on the walls, assessing everything, calculating what my life was worth. Mom was perched on the edge of the couch, clutching her purse like she was afraid something might jump out at her. "Nice place," Dad said when he saw me. "Doing well for yourself? Must be nice having all this while your nephews struggle." Right. Starting with guilt trips immediately. Classic move. "What do you want?" I asked, not bothering to sit down. "We want to talk," Mom said. "Have an actual conversation instead of fighting over the phone. We drove an hour to get here. The least you can do is hear us out. There's nothing to talk about. I'm not giving you money. You could have saved the trip." "We're not just asking for money," Dad said, leaning forward. "We're asking you to step up for family. These boys are your nephews, whether you acknowledge them or not. They've lost their mother. Their father abandoned them. They need stability and support. And I'm your son, whether you acknowledge it or not. Didn't seem to matter 6 years ago when I needed stability and support." Mom's expression hardened. "You're really going to hold that over us forever. We made one mistake and you're going to punish us for the rest of our lives." "One mistake. You told your diabetic son to figure out his medical crisis alone. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. You chose your comfort over my health." "We made a mistake," she repeated. "We admit that. But you can't seriously compare helping with medication to raising 2 traumatized children. The situations aren't even remotely similar." "You're right. One situation involved $600 monthly for 3 months, $1,800 total. The other involves $1,500 monthly for years, potentially tens of thousands of dollars. The expensive one you want help with, the cheap one you couldn't be bothered." "Money isn't the point," Dad said. "Money is exactly the point. You have enough to raise these kids. You just don't want to spend your retirement savings on them. You want me to fund it so you can keep your lifestyle intact." "That's not true," Mom protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then use your own money. You're not broke. You're comfortable. You have savings, pensions paid off assets. Prove me wrong." They couldn't. We all knew they had the resources. They just didn't want to use them. The silence stretched out heavy and uncomfortable. "What about the boys?" Mom finally asked. "Don't you care what happens to them? They're innocent in all of this. I care that they're in a bad situation. I don't think that situation is my responsibility to fix financially. Wyatt abandoned them. That's on him. You're their grandparents who spent years enabling his behavior. That's on you. I'm their uncle they've never met because you cut me out of your lives. That's not on me. Family is family," Dad said. "You're right. And when your family member had a medical emergency, you told him to handle it alone. Told him he needed to learn responsibility. Told him you wouldn't bail him out just because life got difficult. When your other family member spent his entire adult life making bad decisions. You enabled every single one, gave him money whenever he asked, made excuses for his failures, and now you're shocked that he turned out to be someone who abandons his kids via email." "We did the best we could with both of you," Mom said. "No. You did the best for Wyatt and told me to figure it out. Different standards, different rules, same pattern my whole life." We went back and forth like this for another 20 minutes. Every angle they tried, I shut down. Every guilt trip I redirected with their own logic from 6 years ago. Every attempt to paint me as the bad guy got flipped back onto them. Dad tried the practical approach. "These boys will remember who was there for them and who wasn't. You're building resentment that will last forever. Like the resentment I built when you told me to figure out my medical crisis alone. That kind of lasting resentment." Mom tried the emotional manipulation. "We're getting older. We won't be around forever. You'll regret this when we're gone. You know what? I'll actually regret not standing up for myself 6 years ago. Not calling you out on your selective support. Not recognizing sooner that you only consider me family when you need something. Dad stood up, clearly frustrated. This conversation is going nowhere. You've made your decision. You're choosing to abandon these children. I'm choosing not to enable Wyatt's irresponsibility with my money. Same way you chose not to enable my medical needs with yours. Full circle. Eventually, they realized they weren't getting anywhere and left. Mom stood up, gathered her purse, looked around my house one more time like she was cataloging everything she could use against me later. As they walked to the door, she turned around one final time. "You've changed," she said, voice cold. "You used to be such a sweet boy. So kind and caring, I don't even recognize you anymore." Yeah, well, life changes people, especially when your parents tell you to figure out life-threatening medical issues on your own. Turns out that kind of abandonment really builds character. We didn't abandon you. You told your diabetic son with no insurance that you wouldn't help with medication costs because he needed to learn responsibility. What would you call that? She didn't have an answer. They left, and I watched them drive away from my window. Natalie came and stood beside me. "That was intense," she said. "That was necessary. They needed to understand that I'm not going to fold just because they show up and demand things. Do you think they'll keep trying? Probably. People like them don't accept no easily. They're used to getting what they want through guilt and manipulation." I was right. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've gotten texts from extended family members I barely know. Aunts and uncles who haven't spoken to me in years suddenly have very strong opinions about my obligations. Cousins I met maybe twice at childhood birthday parties are lecturing me about family values. The messages follow predictable patterns. Those poor boys need help. How can you be so heartless? Your parents raised you and this is how you repay them. Family takes care of family. Nobody asks why my parents with a comfortable retirement and paid-off house need financial help from their son. Nobody questions why Wyatt abandoned his children or where he disappeared to. Nobody wonders why I went 6 years without contact with my family or what might have caused that. Just blanket assumption that I'm the bad guy. One aunt sent me a multi-paragraph text about how blood is thicker than water and how I should be the bigger person. I didn't respond. Another uncle called me, directly left a voicemail about how disappointed my grandparents would be if they were still alive to see me turn my back on family. That one almost made me laugh. My grandparents always liked Wyatt better too. Pattern recognition isn't that hard. The most aggressive messages came from my mom's sister. 5 texts in one day, each one more guilt-trippy than the last. Started with gentle persuasion, ended with accusations that I was selfish and cruel. Told me I'd regret this when my parents died, and I had to live with knowing I abandoned them in their time of need. I blocked her number after that one. Not worth the energy to engage. I've been getting messages about my inheritance too. Apparently, my parents told multiple people they're removing me from their will, making sure the whole extended family knows I'm being punished financially for my refusal to comply. Then, their lawyer called, not my parents directly. They sent their lawyer to deliver the message like I was being served with legal papers or something. "This is Attorney Stevens calling on behalf of Richard and Patricia," he said. "Very formal and professional. I'm calling to inform you that my clients have made changes to their estate planning documents." "Okay?" I said, genuinely curious where this was going. "You've been removed as a beneficiary from their will. They wanted me to inform you officially of this change." I had to suppress a laugh. This was supposed to devastate me. This was their big power move. Tell my parents that if they want to hurt me, they'll have to try much harder than that. What inheritance? They've been telling me for weeks that they're so broke they can't afford to raise 2 kids without my financial help. They're on a fixed income and can't manage the expenses. So either they're lying about their financial situation to manipulate me into giving them money, or there's not much to inherit anyway. Can't have it both ways. The lawyer was quiet for a moment. "I'm just conveying their message, sir. Message received and acknowledged. They're broke enough to need $1,500 monthly from me, but rich enough to threaten me with inheritance removal." Got it. That makes perfect sense. Is there anything else you'd like me to convey to them? Sure. Tell them that people who actually have significant estates to pass on don't usually need to beg their children for money to raise their grandkids. The math doesn't add up, but I'm sure they'll figure that out eventually. The lawyer sounded genuinely uncomfortable. I'll pass that along. You do that. Have a nice day. I hung up feeling oddly satisfied. They'd played what they thought was a trump card, threatening to disinherit me, and it had zero effect. The lawyer probably reported back that I didn't care at all, which must have been confusing for them. People who threaten inheritance removal expect fear or begging. They got logic and indifference instead. After that call, we had complete radio silence for about a week. Then, my parents apparently shifted strategies to passive-aggressive social media warfare. Things started appearing on Facebook that were clearly directed at me even though I wasn't tagged. The worst pain is being betrayed by your own children with a photo of a sad-looking elderly couple sitting alone on a bench. Some people forget everything you've done for them the moment they don't need you anymore with about 15 crying face emojis. Family should mean something, blood should mean something. But some children only care about themselves, followed by prayer hands and broken heart emojis. Extended family members would like and comment, creating this echo chamber of validation for their victim narrative. Stay strong, you don't deserve this. Some people have no gratitude. It was like watching a performance where everyone knew their lines. One particularly manipulative post was a photo of my nephews, the two boys who were the supposed reason for all this drama. These angels deserve better than what life has given them. Praying someone steps up to give them the support they need since their own family has turned their backs. Never mind that Wyatt, their actual father, was the one who turned his back. Never mind that my parents had the resources to support them. It was all positioned to make me look like the villain who refused to help innocent children. The comments on that post got particularly aggressive. People I hadn't seen since high school were weighing in about what a terrible person I must be. Distant cousins were sharing their opinions about family duty. It was a whole production designed to pressure me through public shame. I didn't engage with any of it, just blocked anyone who became too aggressive in trying to contact me directly and kept living my life. Natalie wanted me to respond to defend myself, but I knew better. Engaging with that kind of manipulation only gives it power. The best response was no response at all. Natalie and I had already been planning to start trying for a baby before all this chaos erupted. We'd been married 2 years, both had stable careers, owned our house. The timing was right. We decided not to let my family drama derail our plans for our future. We started trying in September. By November, we had a positive pregnancy test. Seeing those 2 lines appear was one of the best moments of my life. Natalie screaming with excitement. Both of us crying happy tears, immediately calling her parents who were absolutely thrilled for us. 6 months after that final confrontation with my parents, we're expecting our first child. We announced to Natalie's family first during Thanksgiving dinner. Her mom cried happy tears. Her dad immediately started making plans to build a crib in his workshop. Her siblings began bickering about who would be the favorite aunt or uncle. It felt like what family was actually supposed to feel like. People genuinely excited about shared milestones. No conditions or ulterior motives attached to their happiness for us. Then we made a public announcement on social media. Just a simple post with the ultrasound photo and a caption about being excited for the next chapter of our lives together. The response was overwhelmingly positive from actual friends and Natalie's family. Then I noticed Wyatt had commented. He'd apparently resurfaced around the time of the second confrontation with my parents, showed up at their place after being gone for 2 months, apologized for abandoning the kids, and explained he'd been in California setting up a new job opportunity. Took the boys with him to relocate to Los Angeles. Whether that story was completely true or just face-saving PR, I didn't know and didn't really care. But at least the kids were back with their father. Whatever else had happened, Wyatt had gotten himself together enough to reclaim his children and take responsibility for them. That was something even if it came after months of abandonment. His comment on our announcement was brief but seemed genuine. Congratulations to both of you. Wishing you the best with everything. I appreciated that. Whatever complicated history existed between us, Wyatt wasn't attacking me over the whole money situation or our parents' drama. We weren't close, probably never would be, but there wasn't active hostility either. Just 2 brothers who'd ended up in completely different places, acknowledging each other's existence from a distance. My parents, though, they posted a status on the same day about how some grandparents never get their dues. and how certain children forget where they came from. Vague enough to maintain plausible deniability, but specific enough that everyone knew exactly who they were talking about. Multiple relatives commented with sympathetic messages about how they understood and were there for them. My parents soaked it up playing the victim card, while Natalie and I prepared for our actual future. Natalie's due date is in about 6 months now. We've set up the nursery, taken all the parenting classes, read approximately 17,000 books about raising kids. Her parents have been incredible, offering to help with childcare, giving us all their saved baby gear from when her siblings were young, genuinely excited about becoming grandparents for the first time.